Hello, my friends, and welcome to Hidden Scriptures Word Study Commentary number 185. Does Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 and 17 prove that Hebrew roots beliefs and theology to be false? This is what some folks are saying. There is a current and ongoing attempt, which was initiated and started way back in antiquity, to prevent Gentile believers in Messiah from obeying the Torah, the Mosaic law. The enemy will do whatever he can to prevent believers, Gentile believers, from walking in obedience to the Father. And I didn't put this in the script, but he does the same thing with our Orthodox Jewish friends. He will do anything he can to keep them from placing their faith and trust in the Messiah. So he's working both sides of the coin there. He doesn't care. The enemy doesn't care what else believers do as long as they do not obey. Some of today's unwitting accomplices of the enemy will state things like the passage of Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 through 17 is a pretty powerful passage when it comes to defeating the false theology of Torahism. And this is a term that they have come up with to be a derogatory term, Torahism. Torahism is a derogatory term that they have come up with to identify those involved in the Hebrew roots, so-called Hebrew roots movement, to identify those who are Messianic believers who obey the Torah, and to identify those like myself who call myself a Torah keeping Christian. Because we have no need to shy away from any passage, we are going to take a look at this particular passage today to find out if it indeed proves that the theology and beliefs of Torah keeping Christians, aka Hebrew roots, aka Messianic believers, aka practitioners of Torahism, are indeed false. It has been asserted that Torah keeping Christians avoid the Colossians 2:16 through 17 passage because it so clearly undermines their theology. I find this quietly amusing, since this is what many antinomian Christians do themselves, which is to avoid, ignore, and disregard scripture that undermines their lawless Christian theology and beliefs. We have no need to hide from anything, okay? We do not avoid anything. Again, there is not a single verse in scripture that we, Torah keeping Christians, have any need to avoid, ignore, and disregard. Why? Because we don't have to. The beliefs and theology of Torah keeping Christians line up and is in perfect harmony with the entirety of Scripture. We don't shy away, we don't hide from anything in Scripture because it all proves that we are on the right path. It has been asserted by some of the antinomians that Colossians 2:16 through 17 proves that New Covenant Gentile believers in Jesus are not required to keep what some of them call the Old Covenant rituals. Now, I don't know exactly what is meant by this verbiage, Old Covenant rituals, but if these Old Covenant rituals is referring to anything that required the Levite priest, then this assertion is correct. But if these so called Old Covenant rituals that some antinomians claim New Covenant Gentile believers in Jesus are not required to obey is referring to the commands of the Father that were given at Mount Sinai that do not require the Levite priest in order to obey, then this assertion is obviously incorrect and in error. Examples: keeping the seventh day Sabbath, eating only clean meat, celebrating in remembrance the biblical feast is just a very small sampling of commands from the Torah that we today can indeed easily obey without any assistance of the Levite priest, which no longer exists or is needed. We believers are to test all things like the Bereans did. We need to consistently and habitually test everything that people are telling us against what the scriptures actually say. Now, when it comes to this passage below, many antinomians today believe that it is saying that they are not to let anyone judge them for eating pork, for celebrating the worldly festivals like Christmas and Easter, or for breaking the fourth commandment pertaining to the seventh day Sabbath every week, etc. But I submit to you that the antinomians have their understanding of this Colossians passage backwards. Let's read it from the Bible version that I highly recommend for those who want to have a deeper understanding of Scripture. And I've got the link right there that you can write down, spend some money, like $20, $25. I don't know how much they're charging today, but spend some money and get you a good Bible right there. You will not regret it. Okay, Colossians chapter 2, verses 16 and 17 from the 2009 edition of the Scriptures. Let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking or in respect of a festival or a new moon or Sabbaths, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah. Footnote in the Scriptures: the body of Messiah is to give ruling judgment on all matters, not the lawless outsiders. And you can read Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 20 to confirm that. It is the body of Messiah that is to give ruling and judgment on all matters of Scripture, not the lawless outsiders, because they don't want anyone to judge them for their ongoing deliberate sins. They do not much care for the following verse from our Messiah, so they pretty much ignore it. And I was texting back and forth with a antinomian the other day, and they brought up the talking point. Well, you're not to judge me, and I told them the Messiah gave us a right to judge you. Well, since I said that to them, they ceased and desisted on any more contact with me because this verse right here, man, they do not like. But it came from our Messiah, and we who love our Messiah enough to obey our Messiah love this passage. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. While the antinomians are taught to interpret the Colossian passage as saying that they are not to allow Torah keeping Christians Messianic believers, Hebrew roots folks, to judge them for their ongoing and deliberate sins of eating pork, breaking the Sabbath every week, etc. We Torah-keeping Christians, we Hebrew roots folks, we Messianic believers understand that Shaul, we know him as Paul, is actually saying the exact opposite. The reality of this passage and the truth of this passage is that Shaul, Paul, is writing to these former pagan Gentiles in Colossae who were now believers in Messiah Yahushua and were now learning how to keep Torah, that they were not to let any pagan, any lawless person, any antinomian among their family members, friends, and associates to judge them because they were no longer eating pork, no longer had any regard for the religious festivals of the pagan world, and they were now keeping the seventh day Sabbath separate and set apart to the Father as a day of rest. Fast forward to today. We who have answered the call from the Father to come out of and to separate ourselves from the practices of antinomian Christianity should not let any outsider from among their ranks, whether it be a family member or friend, to try to discourage us in our walk of faith that now includes obedience to the Father's commands, to his teachings, to his instructions, and to his directions that are contained in the Torah, the Mosaic Law. We have the entirety of Scripture as our sure and solid foundation on which we stand and base our beliefs and theology on. So do not become discouraged by these nobodies, these who will be the least regarded in the kingdom of heaven. Okay, folks, I will leave it here today, and I hope and pray that you were able to glean something useful and edifying from this word study today. I love you guys, and I very much appreciate you being here and watching my videos. It really means a lot to me, and we will be with you again, Father willing, in our next Hidden Scriptures Word Study Commentary. Take care, and I hope to be with you again.